creating prototypes and having people try them as soon as possible is a big part of our work. And you've played a central role in organizing these monthly playtesting sessions where we invite teachers and teacher educators and pre-service teachers to come into our lab and try out the different things that we're working on. Can you talk a little bit about what those events are and why we do them and why they're important for our research?
So these play tests are opportunities for us to take all the stuff that we're working on in the lab and actually try these ideas out with people who could potentially be our future audience. People who are interested in becoming teachers, people who might have an interest in education, and they don't necessarily work every day with these projects, so they don't kind of know them inside out the way we know them.
How is it, a lot of the things that we're designing are meant to be used over hours and hours or over weeks. There's, games or simulations that might take a long time to have a full experience with. How do you decide, if people come in for a shorter playtesting session, they can only come in for 20 minutes or 40 minutes for an exercise that's meant to ultimately take 2 or 3 hours. How do we set up those playtests so that people can, so that our designers can get useful information even from a short period of time with people?
Oftentimes when you have a short period of time, but you have a kind of a big project, you zero in on 1 or 2 pieces. For example, for the ELK project, we've zeroed in on actually how the game works, and later we'll think about, for example, what it looks like. So sort of focusing in on the kind of core mechanics of the exercise and not worrying so much about the design and the graphics or those other kinds of things. And then in the future, we might actually do play tests where we're just focused on what it looks like. And so we've kind of broken it up into different pieces so we can learn a lot about a small part of a bigger project. What kinds of work do you have to do before a playtesting event to prepare to make the most out of your time with a group of users? So one of the things we do is we really figure out what the goal is for this playtest. Maybe we even write them out. And sometimes we write them out as objectives and sometimes we write them out as questions. But we prepare some materials. Sometimes it's a couple of questions that we want people to answer, maybe even have them answer something before they do the activity and then after, because then we can actually see what the effect of the activity might be. Another thing that we do is we make sure that we have enough materials for the people who are coming in. And we also want people in the playtests to have the right number of people to work with in their groups. So a huge issue and maybe a huge challenge is basically sorting people who come in into different groups. Right, because when we do playtesting, we often will have 5 or 6 projects that we've been working on, and we don't know exactly how many teachers or teacher educators are coming in, so we're often sort of shuffling and sorting. Some of the participants in this class, they might actually just be focused on one kind of thing. But that's a great point, the idea of, do you have the right number of people for your activity? Are they prepared? Do you have all the things that you need so you can use their time really efficiently to learn from what they're doing? Those things seem like they're important. And you don't need to have a lot of people or a really complicated playtest. You can actually just playtest with a small number of people or even one person who might not work directly on the project. But what's really helpful if you're playtesting with somebody is to have somebody else in the room who can just take notes and just focus on observing. Then you don't have to, for example, ask questions and also write down the answers to the questions, because that leads to all sorts of awkward pauses, and really having somebody else, even just one other person, can be really helpful in doing a playtest. So your teams look like there's one person who's kind of in charge of the testing, who's facilitating the experience, who say, here's the thing that we're working on, you try it, and then a person's doing that, and then there's a second person who's really doing data collection kinds of things, who's taking notes, who's listening to the answers to questions, who's making observations about what the person is actually doing. That makes a lot of sense to sort of divide the work up in that way. And it doesn't have to be a lot of people. One person is really, really very helpful. And you've done a lot of this kind of testing on different projects over your career. What would you say have been some of the most important lessons that you've learned in having this kind of play testing and trying work really successfully? Well, one thing that I was really surprised about is I had a game that I was testing, and some teachers had some really strong opinions about it. So I actually changed it for the next round of teachers 20 minutes later. So the idea that in these playtests you can actually, they can evolve even as the playtest is going on. So that was really exciting to me. And the second time it worked. It really worked well. And so we were able to kind of keep that piece in the game and then kind of get rid of the piece that didn't work so well. So
that idea of even if you are working in a relatively short period of time, you can be taking prototypes, gathering data about them, especially if you're getting really strong data from the people you're working with, making revisions to them, trying them again with other groups of people, and it's really that iterative cycle that's where innovation comes from.
Yeah, and one of the things about the try cycle is that, in the kind of the picture of the design cycle that you see, the try looks like one step, but you can actually try. You might try with different people. You might try some with a small group and some with a bigger group. The try piece, you can learn so much from it that you might want to even iterate through the try step a few times. But it's always good to have an idea of what you want to get from that try step, to have a focus. Otherwise, you can get so much information that it can feel a little overwhelming.
That's great. No, thanks for all these helpful ideas.
Sure thing.